The gunshot echoed across the dusty Montana plain, sending a flock of startled birds into the amber sky, as Lillian Nash gripped the smoking revolver with shaking hands. The man who'd promised to marry her lay dead at her feet, his satchel spilling open to reveal not only her life savings, but the wedding bands of 3 other women. 5 minutes earlier, she'd overheard him bragging to the barkeep about his latest conquest, her, and how he'd be leaving town by morning with another fortune. Montana Territory, 1878. Lillian had traveled west after losing her family to influenza in Philadelphia, answering an advertisement for a schoolteacher position in Promise Creek. At 24, she'd embraced the opportunity for a fresh start, bringing with her education, refined manners, and a desperate hope that the frontier would offer what the East had not a place to belong. "Miss Nash, what have you done?" Sheriff Taylor burst through the saloon doors, his weathered face paling at the scene before him. "He stole from me," Lillian whispered, the revolver slipping from her grasp. "He stole everything." "That don't justify murder," the sheriff replied, though his eyes softened with something like understanding. He gently took her arms, binding her wrists with rope. "I'm afraid you'll have to stand trial." The trial was swift and merciless. Despite testimonies from other women who'd fallen victim to similar schemes, the judge sentenced Lillian to hang. She sat in her cell the night before her execution, wondering how her life had spiraled to this point. No one in Promise Creek truly knew her. No one would mourn her passing. The jailhouse door creaked open well past midnight. Lillian looked up, expecting the preacher with final prayers. Instead, a tall man with broad shoulders filled the doorframe, his face shadowed beneath a worn Stetson. "Miss Nash," he said, his voice low and steady. "My name is Finn Zachary. I'm here to help you escape." Lillian backed against the wall. "Why would you risk yourself for a stranger?" "Because I know you're innocent." He produced a ring of keys. "That man you shot swindled my sister out of her ranch 2 years ago, left her with nothing but shame." "I still killed a man," she whispered, "a man who deserved killing." Finn unlocked her cell. "But that doesn't mean you deserve hanging. I've got horses waiting. We need to move now." Lillian hesitated, studying his face in the dim lantern light. His eyes were a deep blue, honest and direct, but she'd thought Charles honest too. How many men had made promises only to betray her in the end? "I can't trust you," she said flatly. "For all I know, you're working with the sheriff to catch me trying to escape, or worse." Finn's expression remained steady. "Then I'll spend forever proving otherwise, Miss Nash. But right now, we need to leave or you'll never get the chance to find out if I'm telling the truth." With the gallows being built outside her window, Lillian made her choice. She followed Finn through the darkness, into a night that smelled of sage and freedom. They rode hard through the night, Lillian clinging to her mount as they navigated narrow mountain passes under a silver moon. By dawn, they'd crossed into the untamed wilderness beyond the reach of Promise Creek's law. "We'll rest here," Finn announced, dismounting near a small stream sheltered by cottonwoods. "Sheriff Taylor won't follow us this far into Blackfoot territory." Lillian slid from her horse, her legs trembling with exhaustion. "Where are you taking me?" "North, to my homestead near Fort Benton. It's remote. You'll be safe there while I work on clearing your name, clearing my name," Lillian laughed bitterly. "I shot a man in front of witnesses." "That name can't be cleared." "Maybe not in Promise Creek," Finn conceded, "but I've got connections with a federal marshal who's been tracking your fiancé for years. Charles Weston wasn't his real name, and you weren't his first victim. If we can prove he was wanted for fraud across 3 territories, folks might see your actions differently." Lillian stared at him. "Why go to such lengths for me?" Finn's expression darkened. After my sister lost her ranch, she took her own life. I swore no other woman would suffer that fate if I could help it. He handed her a canteen. Rest now. We've got ground to cover before nightfall. As they continued north, Lillian studied her rescuer. Finn Zachary was unlike any man she'd encountered before, quiet but not brooding, strong but not intimidating. He treated her with a distant respect, never pressing for conversation yet answering her questions openly. "Were you always a rancher?" she asked as they rode side by side through a golden valley. "No, madam. Fought for the Union in '65. Came west after, looking for something that made more sense than war." He adjusted his hat against the setting sun. "Found peace raising horses and cattle. The animals don't lie, and the land asks only honest work." After 3 days of hard travel, they crested a ridge overlooking a sprawling ranch nestled between rolling hills and a winding river. Several buildings clustered around a 2-story farmhouse, smoke curling from its chimney. "Welcome to Horizon Ranch," Finn said, a quiet pride in his voice. "It's not much, but it's honest ground." They were greeted by a gray-haired woman who emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. "Finn Zachary, I expected you back 2 days ago." "Had a detour, Mrs. Holloway." Finn dismounted and helped Lillian down. "This is Miss Nash. She'll be staying with us for a while." Mrs. Holloway's shrewd eyes assessed Lillian before softening. "Well, you look dead on your feet, child. Come inside. Supper's nearly ready and I've just finished baking bread." That night, after the first proper meal and bath she'd had in days, Lillian sat on the porch watching stars appear in the vast Montana sky. Finn joined her, offering a cup of coffee. "Thank you," she said, accepting it. "For everything. Don't thank me yet. We've still got troubles ahead." "I know." She sipped the strong coffee. "I've been thinking about what you said about clearing my name. Even if we prove Charles was a criminal, I still took a life." Finn settled beside her. "Out here, justice isn't always delivered by courts and judges. Sometimes it's delivered by those who have been wronged." "Is that what you truly believe?" she asked. "I believe you deserve a chance at the life that was stolen from you," he replied simply. "The rest is up to you." In the days that followed, Lillian found herself settling into life at Horizon Ranch. Mrs. Holloway, the housekeeper who'd helped raise Finn after his parents died, taught her to make sourdough bread and preserve vegetables from the kitchen garden. Though Lillian had been raised in genteel society, she found satisfaction in these practical tasks. Finn often left before dawn, returning dusty and tired in the evenings. He spoke little of his efforts on her behalf, but occasionally mentioned meetings with the marshal or trips to neighboring settlements. One evening, he returned with newspapers from several territories. "Look at these," he said, spreading them across the kitchen table. Articles detailed confidence schemes matching Charles's methods, though the descriptions named different aliases. "This one's from Wyoming," Lillian said, pointing to a story about a man calling himself Jonathan Pierce. "The photograph, it's blurry, but that's him. The marshal's building a case. If we can prove you were defending yourself against a known criminal, it might change things." "Do you really believe that?" Finn met her gaze. "I believe in trying." As summer faded into autumn, Lillian found herself watching for Finn's return each day, her heart lightening at the sight of him riding over the ridge. They developed a comfortable routine, sharing the evening meal with Mrs. Holloway before sitting on the porch, talking as the stars emerged. He told her about his time in the war, about building the ranch from nothing, about his sister Emily, and her dreams of creating a horse breeding program before Charles Weston, using the name James Crawford, then had swindled her. Lillian shared stories of her childhood in Philadelphia, her years teaching in a girls' academy, her journey west seeking independence. Gradually, she revealed more painful truths: her father's gambling debts that left them destitute, her mother's decline into laudanum addiction, her desperate grab at happiness with a man who'd seemed to offer security. "I should have known better," she admitted one crisp October evening. "Charles was too perfect, too eager to marry quickly. Swindlers prey on decent people's trust," Finn said. "That's not your failing. But I killed him." She hugged herself against the chill. "Sometimes I see his face when I close my eyes." Finn was quiet for a long moment. "After the war I saw faces too, still do sometimes. Men I killed in battle, boys, some of them." His voice grew hoarse. "You learn to live with it, not forget you shouldn't forget, but you find a way to carry it." Lillian felt tears threaten. "How?" "By making each day after count for something good." The following week brought the first snow and a visitor, Marshal James Harrington, a stern-faced man with iron-gray hair and a reputation for relentless pursuit of justice. "Miss Nash," he said, removing his hat as he entered the warm kitchen. "I've reviewed the evidence Mr. Zachary has gathered. Combined with my own investigation, we've identified at least 7 women who were victims of the man you knew as Charles Weston. His real name was Theodore Blackwell." Lillian's hands trembled around her teacup. "Does that change anything?" "Legally speaking, you still took a man's life," the marshal said bluntly. "But I've spoken with the territorial judge. Given the circumstances and Blackwell's criminal history, he's willing to consider a self-defense argument." Hope fluttered in Lillian's chest. "I could be cleared." "You'd need to stand trial again," Marshal Harrington cautioned. "No guarantees of the outcome, but yes, there's a chance." After the marshal departed, Finn found Lillian in the barn, brushing down the gentle mare she'd come to think of as her own. "You don't have to go back," he said quietly. "You could stay here, build a new life under a different name. No one would find you." Lillian's hand stilled on the mare's flank. "Live as a fugitive, always looking over my shoulder. Live free," Finn corrected. "Mrs. Holloway's getting older. She could use help running the house. And I—" He hesitated. "I've grown accustomed to your company." Something warm unfurled in Lillian's chest at his words, but she shook her head. "I can't build a life on lies, not anymore. I need to face this." Finn stepped closer. "Then I'll be with you every step." The journey back to Promise Creek was tense with unspoken fears. The town had grown since Lillian's escape months earlier, new buildings rising along the main street. People stared as Finn escorted her to the jailhouse, where Marshal Harrington waited with Sheriff Taylor. "Didn't think I'd see you walk in here voluntarily," Sheriff Taylor remarked, eyebrows raised. "I'm not running anymore," Lillian replied, standing straight-backed beside Finn. The new trial was set for December. Lillian remained in custody, though conditions were improved from her previous imprisonment. Finn visited daily, bringing books, proper meals, and updates from his continued investigation into Theodore Blackwell's crimes. "We found another victim in Helena," he reported one afternoon. "She's willing to testify about how he manipulated her into signing over her inheritance." "Will it be enough?" Lillian asked. "Not for the first time." "It has to be," Finn answered, his hand briefly covering hers through the cell bars. The courtroom was packed on the trial's opening day. Curious townspeople crowded the benches, eager to witness the proceedings against the schoolteacher turned murderer turned fugitive, whose story had become something of a local legend. Over 3 days, witnesses testified to Blackwell's character and crimes. Women traveled from as far as Denver to describe how he'd charmed and betrayed them. The barkeep recounted overhearing Blackwell boasting about his plans to abandon Lillian after stealing her savings. Finn took the stand on the final day, his testimony steady and clear as he described his sister's suffering and subsequent suicide after falling victim to the same man. Emily was 22, he said, emotion breaking through his composed exterior. She believed in love and trust, and that man destroyed her. When I heard about Miss Nash, I couldn't stand by and watch history repeat itself. When Lillian's turn came, she faced the jury with quiet dignity. I had no intention of killing anyone that day, she stated. I confronted Mr. Blackwell about what I'd overheard. He laughed, said I was just another stupid woman who deserved to be robbed. Her voice wavered. Then he reached for his gun. I had my father's revolver in my reticule. I'd started carrying it for protection during my journey west. I fired without thinking. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood. We find the defendant acted in self-defense against a known criminal who threatened her life. Not guilty. Relief washed through Lillian like a physical force. She turned to find Finn already moving toward her, his face alight with joy. Outside the courthouse, snowflakes drifted from a pearl-gray sky. Lillian breathed deeply, savoring her first taste of true freedom in months. "What will you do now?" Finn asked, standing close beside her. Lillian considered. "The school board has already hired another teacher. I suppose I could travel to another town, start again, or you could come back to Horizon," Finn suggested, his voice careful. "Not as a fugitive this time. As what?" He took her gloved hands in his. "As whatever you want to be. A teacher, we could build a school for the neighboring ranch's children, a partner in the ranch, or—" He hesitated. "Something more if you were willing." Lillian searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity in his blue eyes. "Finn, I've made terrible mistakes trusting men before. I know." He squeezed her hands gently. "And I know words don't mean much after what you've been through, but I meant what I said that first night. I'll spend forever proving myself worthy of your trust." For the first time in longer than she could remember, Lillian smiled without reservation. "Forever is a long time, Mr. Zachary." "Not nearly long enough, Miss Nash." They returned to Horizon Ranch as the first heavy snows of winter blanketed the Montana landscape. Mrs. Holloway welcomed Lillian with open arms and knowing eyes that flicked between her and Finn with thinly veiled approval. Lillian spent the winter months planning a small schoolhouse to be built on the ranch's eastern edge. Neighboring families, hearing of the project, offered lumber and labor in exchange for their children's education. Finn expanded the ranch house, adding another bedroom and enlarging the kitchen to Mrs. Holloway's specifications. They grew closer with each passing day, yet Finn never pressed for more than Lillian was ready to give. He seemed content with shared meals, conversations by the fire, and occasional rides across the snow-covered pastures. When their hands brushed while passing dishes or their eyes held a moment too long, he would simply smile and continue whatever task was at hand. By spring's first thaw, Lillian knew her heart had made its decision. She found Finn in the barn one morning, repairing a saddle as sunlight streamed through cracks in the wooden walls. "I've been thinking," she began, settling on a hay bale beside him. "A dangerous pastime," he teased, setting aside his work. "I've been afraid," she continued, gathering her courage. "Not of you, but of being wrong again, of trusting my judgment when it failed me so badly before." Finn waited, patient as always. "But I realize now that fear is just another prison, and I've had enough of prisons." She met his gaze steadily. "I love you, Finn Zachary. I don't need forever to be convinced of that." The saddle clattered to the floor as Finn moved to kneel before her, taking her hands in his calloused ones. "Lillian Nash, I've loved you since that first night on the porch, when you told me all about your students in Philadelphia and your eyes lit up despite everything you'd been through." "You never said anything," she whispered. You needed time. I had plenty to give." He raised one hand to brush a strand of hair from her cheek. "I still do, all the time you need." "What I need," Lillian said, leaning into his touch, "is you." Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a promise exchanged without words. When they parted, Finn's smile held all the warmth of the spring sun outside. "Does this mean you'll marry me, Miss Nash?" he asked. "I believe it does, Mr. Zachary." They married in May beneath the cottonwood trees by the river, with Mrs. Holloway, Marshall Harrington, and families from neighboring ranches in attendance. Lillian wore a simple cream dress with wildflowers in her hair, and Finn couldn't take his eyes off her throughout the ceremony. "I never thought I'd find this," she confessed that night as they stood on the porch of their home, watching fireflies rise from the meadow grass. "Not just love, but a place that feels like it's truly mine." "It is yours," Finn assured her, his arm secure around her waist. "All of it. The land, the home." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "My heart." "And you have mine," she replied, turning in his embrace. "Forever." The schoolhouse opened that autumn with 12 students ranging from 6 to 16 years old. Lillian thrived as a teacher, bringing education to children who would otherwise have gone without. Finn expanded the ranch's horse breeding program, developing a line of sturdy, intelligent mounts that gained recognition throughout the territory. 2 years after their wedding, their daughter Emily was born, followed 18 months later by their son Thomas. The children grew up strong and curious, with their father's blue eyes and their mother's determination. Occasionally, Lillian would wake from nightmares about that day in the saloon, the gun in her hand, a man's life ended by her action. On those nights, Finn would hold her close, reminding her of all they'd built together, of the good that had somehow grown from terrible circumstances. "We can't change the past," he would say, his voice a comforting rumble in the darkness. "We just make the future better because of it." As their children grew, so did Horizon Ranch. By 1890, it had become one of the most prosperous in the region, known for its fine horses and the school that now served 25 students. Lillian and Finn worked side by side, their partnership deepening with each passing year. On their 15th anniversary, Finn surprised Lillian with a trip back east to visit her childhood home in Philadelphia. Standing on the streets where she'd grown up, she marveled at how far she'd come. "You ever regret it?" she asked Finn as they walked arm in arm through a city park. "Rescuing me that night, taking on all my troubles, not for a single moment," he answered without hesitation. "Though I wouldn't call it rescuing. You saved yourself, Lillian. I just offered a horse and a direction," she laughed. "And then everything else. That was the easy part." He squeezed her hand. "Loving you is the simplest thing I've ever done." They returned to Montana with renewed appreciation for the life they'd built together. As the century turned, bringing new challenges and opportunities, Horizon Ranch remained their sanctuary. Emily grew up to become a doctor, establishing the first proper medical clinic in the region. Thomas took to ranching like his father, eventually expanding their operations to include neighboring lands. Through it all, Finn and Lillian's bond only strengthened. In quiet moments, they would sometimes marvel at the unlikely path that had brought them together, a desperate escape, a promise made in darkness, a lifetime spent fulfilling it. On warm summer evenings, they still sat together on the porch as stars appeared above the land they loved, their hands intertwined. The past's shadows long faded in the light of all they'd created together. "You kept your promise," Lillian said on one such evening, her head resting against Finn's shoulder as they watched their grandchildren play in the twilight. "About spending forever proving yourself." "I'm not finished yet," Finn replied, pressing a kiss to her silver-streaked hair. "Forever's not over, Mrs. Zachary." Lillian smiled, thinking of the frightened, distrustful woman she'd been and the journey that had led her to this moment of perfect contentment. "No," she agreed, turning her face up to his. "It's just beginning.